The ancient station of Vethkal hung in the void between stars, like a monument to galactic civilization itself. It was older than most species could remember. Its halls had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Its chambers had hosted treaties that shaped the fate of billions. And today, for the first time in 10,000 years, the elders had come to speak. Ambassador Kira Chen stood in the observer gallery above the main chamber, her hands clasped behind her back in a pose of patient attention. Below her, representatives from 400 species filled the curved rows of seats that faced the central speaking platform. The air buzzed with translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of languages into something each delegate could understand. Kira was young by diplomatic standards, only 32 years old, but she had been chosen for this posting because of her ability to watch and wait. Earth needed watchers now. Earth needed patience. The hegemony of VAR dominated the front rows, as they always did. Their representatives were tall and broad, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that burned with a dull red light. They had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years through simple brutality. What they wanted, they took. What resisted them, they crushed. The other species had learned to bow their heads and offer tribute rather than face extinction. Humanity had learned this lesson too, in its own way. The chamber fell silent as the elder representative moved toward the speaking platform. The elders were strange to look upon. Their bodies seemed to shift and flow like smoke given form. Their faces, if they could be called faces, held no expression that any other species could read. They were old beyond measure. They had existed when the first stars were young, and they almost never spoke to anyone. "We have come to deliver a warning," the elder said. Its voice was like wind through dead leaves, dry and ancient, and somehow sad. "We have watched the galaxy for longer than any of you can comprehend. We have seen patterns repeat across millions of years, and we see a pattern now that you must understand." The VAR High Commander, a massive creature named Thrak, shifted in his seat with obvious impatience. His species had no respect for anything they could not kill or conquer, and the elders were beyond both. This made them irrelevant in VAR eyes. "Speak your warning." Then Thrak growled, "Some of us have actual business to conduct." The elder turned its shifting gaze toward the VAR commander. For a moment, something like pity seemed to pass across its formless features. "The species called humanity," the elder said. "You must act against them now while action is still possible. In 50 years, it will be too late. In 100 years, you will belong to them." Laughter rippled through the chamber, not from every species, but from enough of them. The VAR laughed loudest of all. Kira Chen did not laugh. She simply watched, her face carefully neutral, her hands still clasped behind her back. "Humanity?" Thrak rose from his seat, his stone-gray body towering over the delegates around him. "You emerged from 10,000 years of silence to warn us about humanity? The soft little creatures who beg for scraps at our table? The species that surrenders before battles even begin?" He gestured toward the observer gallery, toward Kira specifically. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at her. She met their gazes with a small, polite smile. "Look at them," Thrak continued. "They have no fleet worth mentioning. Their technology is primitive. They accept every unfair treaty we offer them and thank us for the privilege. They are servants, not threats. Useful servants, perhaps, but servants nonetheless." The elder did not react to the mockery. It simply waited until the laughter died down before speaking again. "You see what they show you," the elder said. "You do not see what they hide. We have searched the deep archives of cosmic history. We have found records of species like humanity before. Species that were hunted and hurt and pushed to the edge of extinction. Species that learned to survive by becoming invisible, by becoming useful, by making themselves so essential that destroying them would mean destroying yourself. Ridiculous." Thrak said. "They are not essential. They are convenient. There is a difference, is there?" The elder's voice carried a weight of sadness that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Tell me, Commander, when your flagship's life support failed last year, who repaired it? When the plague struck your outer colonies, who provided the cure? When your economy nearly collapsed from the grain shortage, who supplied the food that saved you?" Thrak's red eyes narrowed. "Human workers and human suppliers. because they are cheap and they do not complain. This proves nothing except that they know their place. Their place. The elders seem to consider the word. Yes, they know their place very well. Better than you know yours. The VAR commander took a threatening step toward the speaking platform, but other delegates held him back. Starting a fight with an elder would be foolish even by VAR standards. You waste our time with riddles, Thrak said. If you have evidence, present it. If not, return to your silence and let those of us who matter conduct our business. The elder was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer, almost gentle. We have evidence, projections, analysis. We can show you the pattern we see, but you will not believe us. You are not capable of believing us, because believing us would require you to admit that you have been fooled, that the species you look down upon has been looking down upon you all along. Your pride will not allow this. Then why come at all? Another delegate asked. This was Ambassador Velenash of the Synthesis Collective, a species known for their logic and careful thinking. If you believe we will not listen, why speak? Because we must try, the elder said. Because when the change comes, we want it known that you were warned, that you had a chance to stop it, that you chose not to. The elder moved toward the edge of the platform, its formless body flowing like dark water. In 50 years, humanity will control your economies. In 70 years, they will control your information. In 90 years, they will control your food, your medicine, your power, your transportation. And you will not notice because they will smile while they do it. They will say please and thank you. They will bow their heads and call you masters. And one day, you will wake up and realize that you cannot eat without their permission. You cannot travel without their approval. You cannot live without their mercy. Thrak laughed again, but this time the sound was forced. And then what? They will demand tribute. They will make war. With what army? With what weapons? They will not need weapons, the elder said. They will simply stop. They will stop feeding you. They will stop healing you. They will stop keeping your worlds running. And you will discover that you have forgotten how to do these things for yourselves. You will discover that you gave them control because it was easier than maintaining it yourselves. You will discover that your empires are hollow shells, that humanity has been holding up from the inside. The chamber was silent now. The laughter had died. Even Thrak seemed uncertain, though his pride would never let him show it. You mistake patience for weakness, the elder said. You mistake observation for ignorance. You mistake service for submission. Humanity has been watching you, learning you, understanding every weakness, every fear, every need. And by the time you understand what they are, you will already belong to them. The elder began to withdraw from the platform, its form fading at the edges like smoke dispersing in wind. We have delivered our warning. We have done what we came to do. What happens now is your choice. But remember when the day comes that you were told, that you could have stopped it, that you chose to laugh instead. And then the elder was gone, vanished as if it had never been there at all. The chamber erupted into noise. Delegates shouted at each other. Thrak roared that the elders had gone mad in their isolation. Others argued that perhaps the warning deserved consideration, but most simply dismissed it as the ramblings of an ancient species that had lost touch with reality. Up in the observer gallery, Kira Chen made notes on her small data pad. Her face remained calm. Her smile remained polite. When other delegates looked up at her, she gave them a small nod of acknowledgement, the humble gesture of a junior species grateful to be allowed in the room. No one noticed how carefully she watched. No one noticed how she recorded every word, every reaction, every dismissive laugh. No one noticed the slight curve of satisfaction at the corner of her lips. That night, she sent her report to Earth through channels that no other species knew existed. The message was short, Phase 1 complete. The warning was delivered and ignored. They see nothing. They suspect nothing. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2. The response came within hours, transmitted through a network of hidden relay stations that humanity had been building for 30 years. Proceed. Maintain cover. Continue observation. The pattern continues. Kira read the message, deleted it, and returned to her quarters to sleep. Tomorrow she would attend more council sessions. She would smile politely at species that looked down on her. She would accept insults with grace and unfair treaties with gratitude. She would play the role that humanity had chosen for itself, the patient servant, the invisible helper, the species too weak to matter and too useful to destroy. It was a good role. It was a safe role, and it was a lie so perfect that 50 years passed like water flowing downhill, slow at first, then faster, then impossible to stop. Commander Drexel of the VAR Intelligence Division sat in his office on the military station, above the VAR homeworld, staring at reports that made no sense. He had spent his entire career studying threats to the hegemony. He had analyzed enemy fleets, predicted invasions, and helped plan the conquest of 17 species. He was very good at his job, and yet he had missed something obvious, something that had been growing right in front of him for half a century. The reports spread across his desk told a story that should have been impossible. Human workers now operated in every major shipyard in hegemony space. Human engineers maintained the power grids on 47 VAR worlds. Human doctors staffed medical facilities across the empire because they were cheaper than VAR doctors and never complained about long hours. This was not concerning by itself. Servant species were meant to do the work that VAR warriors found beneath them. This was the natural order of things, but the pattern went deeper, much deeper. Drexel picked up one report and read it again. Human financial institutions now held debt from 63 species across council space. They offered better interest rates than anyone else. They were always willing to extend credit when other lenders refused. They never demanded harsh terms or seized assets when payments were late. They were helpful, generous, patient to patient. He picked up another report. Human merchant ships traveled routes that no one else used, connecting systems that had been isolated for centuries. These ships were fast, faster than their specifications suggested they should be. When VAR patrol vessels tried to scan them, the scans somehow always failed or returned incomplete data. Technical difficulties, the human captains would explain with apologetic smiles. Our equipment is not very advanced. We are still learning. Another report. Human cultural ambassadors had established schools and hospitals on hundreds of worlds. They learned every language they encountered. They studied every custom. They made friends with young politicians who later rose to positions of power. They remembered birthdays and anniversaries. They sent gifts on holidays that other species had forgotten they celebrated. And no other species had bothered to learn a single human language. No one had studied human customs. No one had cared enough to try. Drexel felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was a feeling he had not experienced in decades. It was fear. He activated his communication terminal and contacted Agent Velanash of the Synthesis Collective. The collective was known for their cold logic, their ability to see patterns that emotional species missed. If anyone could confirm or deny his suspicions, it was them. Velanash appeared on the screen, her crystalline features glowing with soft internal light. Commander Drexel, this is unexpected. What can the collective do for the hegemony? I need your analysis, Drexel said. The humans. Have you noticed anything unusual about their expansion? Velanash was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. We have noticed. We have been noticing for 20 years. But whenever we raise concerns in council, we are dismissed. The hegemony leads the dismissal, usually. Drexel closed his eyes. 20 years. He had been blind for 20 years. Tell me what you see, he said. Velanash pulled up a display that appeared on Drexel's screen. It showed a map of council space with lines connecting different systems. Human trade routes, human financial connections, human medical networks, human educational programs. The lines crisscross the galaxy like a web. 17 critical supply chains depend on human participation, Velanash said. If humans stopped working tomorrow, those supply chains would collapse within a month. 300 billion beings would face food shortages. 40 major medical systems would lose access to essential medicines. Power generation on over 100 worlds would become unstable. That cannot be right, Drexel said. They are just workers. They can be replaced. They cannot be replaced, Velanash said. We analyzed this possibility. The humans have made themselves experts in systems that no one else understands anymore. They maintain equipment that they designed. They run processes that they created. They hold knowledge that exists nowhere else. Replacing them would take decades, and during those decades, civilizations would fall. Drexel stared at the web of lines on his screen. It looked like a trap. It looked like a net that had been carefully, patiently woven around the entire galaxy. Why did no one see this? He asked. Because they wanted us not to see it, Velanash said. They have been very careful. They never take important positions. They never hold official power. They are always assistants, helpers, workers. They smile and bow and say please and thank you. They never threaten anyone. They never demand anything. They just make themselves useful. More useful every year. Until now, when they are essential. Drexel thought about the Elder's warning 50 years ago. He had laughed at it. Everyone had laughed at it. The idea that the weak little humans could pose any threat to the mighty of our hegemony had seemed absurd. It did not seem absurd anymore. There's more, Velanash said. I have been investigating human intelligence operations. They are very good at hiding, but not perfect. I have found evidence that human medical researchers have been mapping the genetic weaknesses of every species they treat. Their cultural ambassadors submit detailed reports on political vulnerabilities. Their merchant captains photograph military installations while they deliver cargo. They are spying on us, Drexel said. All of us. All the time. For 50 years at least, Velanash confirmed. Possibly longer. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. They know our weaknesses, our fears, our dependencies, and we know almost nothing about them. Drexel felt the cold fear spread through his body. What are they planning? I do not know, Velanash said. That is what frightens me most. They have spent 50 years building this web, and we have no idea what they intend to do with it. The elders had known. The elders had tried to warn them, and they had laughed. Drexel ended the call and sat in the darkness of his office for a long time. He thought about all the human workers on VAR stations, all the human doctors in VAR hospitals, all the human engineers keeping VAR ships flying and VAR cities lit. He thought about how easy it would be for them to stop, how quickly everything would fall apart if they simply walked away. And he thought about the reports he had dismissed over the years, reports of human ships that were too fast, human technology that was too advanced, human coordination that was too perfect for a primitive species. They had hidden it all. They had shown the galaxy exactly what the galaxy expected to see: a weak, eager, servile species that just wanted to help. And the galaxy had believed it because believing it was easy. The next morning, Drexel requested an emergency session of the Galactic Council. He brought his reports, his analysis, his evidence of the web that humanity had woven. He stood before the assembled representatives and laid out everything he had found. High Commander Thrak, old now but still powerful, listened with growing anger. When Drexel finished, Thrak rose from his seat. You expect me to believe that humans are a threat? Thrak demanded. Humans? The species that cleans our floors and tends our wounded? This is paranoid fantasy. Look at the evidence, Drexel said. Look at the pattern. They control our supply chains. They maintain our infrastructure. They hold our debt. If they wanted to destroy us, they would not need a single weapon. They are servants, Thrak said. Servants do not threaten masters. This is the natural order of things. The natural order of things has changed, Drexel said. While we were not looking, while we were too proud to pay attention, they changed it. The elders warned us 50 years ago. We laughed at them. We were wrong. As if summoned by the mention of their name, an elder appeared in the chamber. It materialized on the speaking platform, its formless body shifting and flowing like dark water. You begin to see, the elder said. 50 years late, but you begin to see. Thrak turned on the elder with fury in his red eyes. You knew this would happen. You could have stopped it. We could not have stopped it, the elder said. We tried to warn you, and you would not listen. That was your choice. The consequences are yours as well. Then tell us what to do, another delegate called out. How do we break free of this web? The elder was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, its voice was heavy with something that sounded like pity. You cannot break free, the elder said. You could have prevented this 50 years ago. You could have treated humanity as equals instead of servants. You could have paid attention to what they were building. You chose not to. And now it is too late. It cannot be too late, Velanash said. There must be something we can do. There is one thing you can do, the elder said. You can hope that when humanity finally reveals itself, they choose to be merciful. You can hope that the species you kicked and mocked and exploited for a century has better nature. Then you showed them. The elder began to fade, its form dissolving at the edges, but I would not count on it, the elder said. Humanity has been very patient, and patient species tend to have long memories. Then the elder was gone, and the council chamber erupted into chaos. But deep in human space, in the hidden chambers beneath Earth's surface, the Defense Council watched the chaos unfold on their screens. The 8th colony world of New Harmony had been humanity's first major settlement. Outside the solar system, 3 million people lived there, farming the rich soil, building cities, raising families. It was a peaceful world, far from the politics and tensions of council space. The colonists wanted nothing except to live their lives in quiet prosperity. The VAR hegemony chose this world to make an example. High Commander Thrak had grown old, but his rage had not diminished. The reports from the council meeting, the evidence of human infiltration, the warnings from the elders, all of it had wounded his pride in ways he could not accept. Someone had to pay. Someone had to be punished, and the humans had made themselves the perfect target. The VAR fleet arrived at New Harmony without warning. 50 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to reduce a continent to glass. The colony's defenses were minimal, a few patrol vessels, some ground-based weapons that could barely scratch VAR armor. It was not a battle. It was not even a slaughter. It was a message. Surrender your world, Thrak broadcast to the colony. Submit to hegemony rule. Your people will be relocated to labor camps where they will serve the VAR for the rest of their lives. This is the price of your species' arrogance. Admiral Chen received the transmission on Earth within minutes, relayed through the hidden network that humanity had built over decades. She watched the VAR fleet positioning itself around New Harmony. She watched the colonists scrambling to evacuate, knowing they could never escape in time. Her advisors waited for her orders. They expected fury. They expected commands to unleash the hidden fleet, to reveal the true power that humanity had kept secret for so long, to destroy the VAR in a blaze of righteous vengeance. Instead, Admiral Chen was calm. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Tell the colony to surrender, she said. Silence filled the command center. Her second-in-command, Captain Morrison, stepped forward. Admiral, we have the power to stop this. Our fleet could reach New Harmony in 12 hours. We could reveal ourselves before we are ready, Admiral Chen said. We could win a battle and lose the war. No, the colony will surrender. We will evacuate everyone we can, and then we will let the VAR have their victory. 3 million people, Morrison said. You are asking them to become slaves. I am asking them to trust the plan, Admiral Chen said. The same plan that has guided us for a century. The same patience that has brought us to this moment. We are not ready yet, but soon, very soon. She turned to face her officers, and her eyes were hard as stone. Send the evacuation order. Every ship we have in that sector is to reach New Harmony and take off as many civilians as possible. Women and children first, then elderly, then everyone else. The VAR want the planet. They can have the planet, but they will not have our people. Not all of them. The evacuation was chaos. Humanity had prepared for moments like this. Hidden transport ships waiting in nearby systems, ready to respond to emergencies. But there was not enough time to save everyone. When the deadline passed, and the last human ship fled into hyperspace, 800,000 colonists remained on New Harmony. They did not fight. They had no weapons that could hurt the VAR. Instead, they stood in their cities and their farms, watching the enemy ships descend from the sky, and they waited for whatever would come next. Thrak was disappointed by the lack of resistance. He had wanted a battle, something he could point to as proof of VAR's superiority. Instead, he got empty streets and silent buildings and humans who looked at him with eyes that held no fear. That was strange, he thought. They should be afraid. Everyone was afraid of the VAR, but these humans simply watched, waited, as if they knew something he did not. The news of New Harmony's fall spread across the galaxy within hours. The other species watched with a mixture of horror and satisfaction. horror at the brutality of the VAR attack, satisfaction that someone was finally putting the uppity humans in their place. The council convened an emergency session to discuss the situation. Some delegates called for sanctions against the hegemony. Others argued that the VAR had acted within their rights, that New Harmony was in disputed territory, and humanity had no legal claim to it. No one expected what happened next on every VAR world, in every VAR city, on every VAR station. The human workers simply stopped working. They did not protest. They did not make demands. They did not speak at all. They just stopped. Engineers walked away from power plants. Doctors walked out of hospitals. Pilots left their ships docked. Farmers left their fields. Mechanics left their tools. Within 24 hours, the VAR hegemony began to collapse. Power grids failed on 17 worlds. Hospitals ran out of critical medicines because no one knew how to operate the human-designed distribution systems. Food processing plants ground to a halt because the human workers were the only ones who understood the equipment. And it was not just the VAR. Across council space, in every nation that had celebrated New Harmony's fall, human workers stopped working. The collective lost access to their information networks. The Trade Alliance watched their financial systems freeze. The Unified Republics discovered that their entire transportation grid depended on human navigators, who had suddenly vanished. Panic spread faster than any plague. Species that had looked down on humanity for a century suddenly realized how completely they had come to depend on the servile little creatures they had treated like dirt. Commander Drexel had warned them. The elders had warned them. No one had listened. Now they were listening. Now they had no choice. The council convened again, but this time there was no satisfaction, no arguments about legal rights. There was only fear. What do they want? The Trade Alliance representative demanded. What are their terms? We will give them anything. They have not made any demands, Velenash of the Collective reported. They have not spoken at all. They simply stopped working and withdrew to their own territories. Then how do we fix this? Someone else asked. How do we make them come back? Before anyone could answer, the screens in the council chamber flickered. Every display, every communication device, every holographic projector suddenly showed the same image, a human woman in a dark uniform. Her face calm, her eyes cold. I am Admiral Chen of Earth's Defense Council, she said. You have taken one of our worlds. You have enslaved 800,000 of our people. You celebrated our suffering and mocked our loss. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Now you understand what we can do without lifting a single weapon. Your worlds are dying. Your people are starving. Your hospitals are failing. And all we did was stop helping you. Thrak's image appeared on a secondary screen. His face twisted with rage. This is an act of war. We will destroy you. You will do nothing, Admiral Chen said. Look at your fleet, Commander. Look at your ships. The VAR fleet that had conquered New Harmony was drifting in orbit, powerless. Every engine had failed. Every weapon had gone offline. Every life support system had stopped functioning. The crews were scrambling into emergency shelters, trying to survive on backup power that would last only hours. Your ships were maintained by human engineers, Admiral Chen said. Your weapons were calibrated by human technicians. Your computers were programmed by human software experts. We did not sabotage your fleet, Commander. We simply stopped maintaining it. This is what happens when you depend on us and then betray us. What do you want? Velenash asked, her voice steady despite the fear that must be coursing through her crystalline body. Name your terms. We will discuss them. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. Our terms are simple. You will release every human prisoner on New Harmony. You will pay reparations for the damage you caused. You will recognize human sovereignty over our claimed territories. And you will never, ever attack our people again. And if we refuse, Thrak snarled, then we continue to do nothing, Admiral Chen said. We sit in our territory and watch your civilization fall apart. We have everything we need to survive on our own. We have been preparing for this moment for a century. How long can you survive without us? The council chamber was silent. Every delegate knew the answer. Days, perhaps. Weeks at most. Then the shortages would become famines. The system failures would become catastrophes. The hegemony and the collective and the alliance and all the rest would tear themselves apart, fighting over scraps. "You are bluffing," Thrak said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "You would not let billions die." Admiral Chen's eyes hardened. "You killed our people on New Harmony. You enslaved our citizens. You laughed at our suffering. Why should we care about your people when you showed such contempt for ours?" She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something almost like a whisper. "You made us into this. You taught us that the galaxy only respects strength, that mercy is weakness, that the strong take what they want and the weak suffer. We learned your lessons well, Commander. Now you will see what we became because of them." The transmission ended, and the screens went dark. In the silence that followed, the delegates looked at each other with a new understanding. They had spent a century treating humanity as servants, as tools, as less than nothing. They had laughed at warnings and dismissed concerns, and the Var hegemony had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Their fleet was legend. Their warriors were death itself. No species had ever stood against them and survived. But now their fleet drifted helpless in orbit around a conquered world, and their legendary warriors could not figure out how to restart their own engines. High Commander Thrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his officers try and fail to restore power. The human engineers who maintained these systems had made everything look so easy. Press a few buttons, run a few diagnostics, and everything worked perfectly. Now those humans were gone, and the Var discovered that they had no idea how their own ships actually functioned. "We have emergency power for another 6 hours, his second-in-command reported. "After that, life support fails. The crew will begin dying within an hour of that." Thrak slammed his fist against the nearest console, cracking the display. "Then figure out how to fix it. We are Var. We conquered half the galaxy. We will not be defeated by our own machinery, but they would be." Thrak knew it. His officers knew it. The entire crew knew it. They had handed control of their ships to human workers because it was convenient, because Var warriors did not concern themselves with such menial tasks, because they had never imagined that the helpful little servants would ever stop serving. The galaxy had made the same mistake. For decades, they had let humanity take over the boring work, the difficult work, the essential work, and now humanity had proven just how essential they had become on Earth. Admiral Chen watched the Var fleet dying and felt something unexpected stir in her chest. It was not satisfaction. It was not triumph. It was something closer to sadness. "They have 6 hours before life support fails," Captain Morrison reported. 3,000 Var crew members will die. Do we let that happen?" Admiral Chen was silent for a long moment. The plan had always been clear: make the galaxy dependent on humanity, then use that dependence to force change. No weapons needed, no battles fought, just the simple withdrawal of services that the galaxy had come to take for granted. But the plan had never included letting thousands die to prove a point. "Prepare a rescue mission," Admiral Chen said. "We will evacuate the Var crews before their ships fail." Morrison stared at her. "Admiral, with respect, these are the same people who conquered New Harmony. They enslaved our citizens. They celebrated our suffering. Why should we save them?" "Because we are not them," Admiral Chen said. "Because if we let them die when we could save them, we become exactly what they thought we were, just another species that uses power to destroy. That is not what humanity is. That is not what we wanted to be." She turned to face her officers, and her voice carried the weight of a decision that would shape the future. "We have spent a century building this power. We have suffered and waited and planned for this moment, but the purpose was never revenge. The purpose was to change things, to make the galaxy better than it was. And we cannot do that by becoming the monsters they expected." The rescue fleet launched within the hour. Human ships, sleek and fast, far more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen humanity operate before, streaked toward the dying Var fleet. On the Var flagship, Thrak watched the human ships approach with disbelief. He had expected an attack. He had expected humanity to take revenge for New Harmony, to destroy the fleet that had conquered their colony. Instead, human shuttles docked with his ship and began evacuating his crew. "What is this?" Thrak demanded when a human officer stepped onto his bridge. "What game are you playing?" The officer was young, calm, and completely unafraid. She looked at the ancient warrior who had terrorized the galaxy and spoke as if she were addressing an equal. "Your life support is failing," she said. "We are here to rescue your crew. Please direct your people to the evacuation points." "We are your enemies," Thrak said. "We conquered your world. We enslaved your people. Why would you save us?" The young officer met his eyes, and there was something in her gaze that Thrak did not understand. It was not hatred. It was not fear. It was something that looked almost like pity. "Because you are living beings," she said. "Because letting you die when we could save you would make us no better than you. Because we have spent a century learning how to be strong. And true strength is not about destruction. It is about choosing mercy when you have the power to choose death." Thrak had no response to this. In 3,000 years of VAR history, no one had ever shown mercy to a defeated enemy. It was not the VAR way. It was not the way of the galaxy. But humanity was not the galaxy. They were something new, something the old powers had not anticipated. The evacuation took for hours. Every VAR crew member was transported to human stations, fed, treated for injuries, and given comfortable quarters. They were not prisoners. They were not slaves. They were guests, treated with a dignity that the VAR had never shown to anyone. And while this was happening, Admiral Chen made a second decision. "Status of the civilians on New Harmony?" she asked. "The VAR have them in holding facilities," Morrison reported. 800,000 people. They were beginning to process them for transport to labor camps when the crisis started. That has been suspended, but they are still prisoners. "And the VAR homeworld?" Morrison checked his displays. "Still in chaos. Power outages across half the planet. Medical systems failing. Food distribution has collapsed. Civilian casualties are mounting." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "How many of our civilians are in danger?" "Millions. Perhaps tens of millions if the situation continues. The Council would expect humanity to let them suffer, to use the VAR civilians as leverage, as hostages, as bargaining chips in the negotiations to come. That was how the game was played in this galaxy. That was how power worked, but that was not how humanity would play it. "Launch the humanitarian fleet," Admiral Chen ordered. "Every medical ship we have, every food transport, every emergency response vessel. Send them to the VAR homeworld." Morrison looked like he wanted to argue, but did not. He simply nodded and relayed the orders. Within 6 hours, human ships began arriving at the VAR homeworld. Not warships, not invasion forces, medical vessels and supply transports, carrying enough food and medicine to save millions of lives. The VAR defense forces tried to stop them, but their weapons would not fire. Their ships would not move. They could only watch as human vessels landed in their cities, and human workers began distributing supplies to the starving population. Thrak, now aboard a human station, watched footage of the humanitarian operation with growing confusion. His warriors were being rescued. His civilians were being fed. His homeworld was being saved from the disaster that his own arrogance had caused. "I do not understand," he said to the human officer who had evacuated his crew. "You have us completely at your mercy. You could demand anything. We would have to give it to you. Why are you helping us instead?" The officer sat down across from him, and her expression was patient, almost gentle. "Commander, do you know why we spent a century making ourselves essential to the galaxy?" "To conquer us," Thrak said. "To take revenge for the way we treated you." "No," the officer said. "We did it because it was the only way you would listen. We tried diplomacy. We tried reasoning with you. We tried explaining that we wanted to be partners, not servants. But you would not hear us. You saw only what you expected to see, a weak species that existed to serve the strong." She leaned forward, and her voice dropped. "We are not weak, Commander. We never were. But we understood that if we showed our strength too early, you would destroy us before we could make a difference. So we waited. We built our power in secret. We made ourselves so essential that you could not survive without us. And then when we finally had the leverage to make you listen, we used it to destroy us." Thrak said. "No," the officer repeated. "To change you, to show you that there is another way. That strength does not have to mean cruelty. That power does not have to mean oppression. That the strong can choose to lift up the weak instead of crushing them." She gestured at the screens showing human ships distributing food to VAR civilians. This is what we wanted all along. Not revenge, not conquest, just the chance to show you what we believe in: mercy, compassion, the idea that every living being deserves dignity, even enemies, even those who hurt us. Thrak stared at the screens for a long time. In 3,000 years, no one had ever shown the Var this kind of treatment. When the Var conquered a world, they enslaved its people and stripped its resources. When they defeated an enemy, they humiliated and destroyed them. That was how power worked. That was how the galaxy had always worked. But humanity was proving that it did not have to work that way. "What do you want from us?" Thrak finally asked. "What are your terms?" The officer smiled, and it was not a cold smile or a mocking one. It was warm, almost kind. "We want our people back from New Harmony. We want recognition of our sovereignty. We want reparations for the damage you caused. And we want a seat at the table as equals, not as servants. That is all?" "That is all," the officer confirmed. "Accept these terms, and we will restore all services to the hegemony. We will help you rebuild. We will teach you how to maintain your own systems so you are never this dependent on anyone again. We do not want to rule you, Commander. We just want you to treat us with respect." Thrak was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You have 10 years had passed since the Var crisis, and the galaxy was unrecognizable." Former Commander Drexel, now Ambassador Drexel, walked through the halls of the new council station. It was smaller than the ancient Vethkal, less grand and imposing, but it felt different in ways that went beyond architecture. The species who gathered here no longer sat in rigid hierarchies, with the powerful in front and the weak in back. They sat together, mixed and mingled, speaking as equals. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had transformed it. Drexel's job now was to serve as liaison between the reformed Var Collective and the Human Alliance. It was strange work for a former intelligence officer, but strange had become normal. Everything was strange now. He passed a group of young Var cadets learning human languages from a patient teacher. Nearby, human engineers worked alongside collective technicians, sharing knowledge that had once been closely guarded. In the medical wing, doctors from a dozen species collaborated on treatments that would have been impossible. In the old days of suspicion and hoarding, this was humanity's vision made real. Not an empire ruled by force, but a community bound by mutual benefit and shared purpose. Drexel still remembered the day, 10 years ago, when he had finally understood what humanity was really doing. He had stood in the council chamber, watching human ships rescue Var civilians instead of letting them die. And something had shifted inside him. The galaxy he had known, the galaxy of predators and prey, of conquerors and conquered, had suddenly seemed small and sad. Humanity had shown them something bigger, something better. The former spy who had once tracked human intelligence operations, the one who had first noticed the pattern of infiltration, now worked as a diplomatic advisor. Her name was Velenesh, and she had become one of humanity's strongest advocates. "You seem thoughtful today," she said, falling into step beside Drexel as he walked. "Memory troubling you?" "Not troubling," Drexel said. "Just wondering, how did they know?" "Know what?" "That we would respond to mercy, that we would change instead of fighting. They took an enormous risk, Velenesh. They could have destroyed us. They could have taken revenge for everything we did to them. Instead, they saved our people and asked only for respect in return. How did they know we would accept?" Velenesh considered the question as they walked. "I asked Admiral Chen the same thing, years ago. She said something I have never forgotten." "What?" "She said humanity did not know. They hoped. They believed. But they did not know for certain. They were prepared for the possibility that we would reject their mercy and force them into a real war. But they chose to try peace first, because that is what they wanted to be." Drexel shook his head slowly. "To risk everything on hope, that is either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both," Velenesh said. "But it worked, and the galaxy is better for it." They reached the observation deck, a wide transparent dome that looked out on the stars. Below them, ships from 100 species came and went, trading goods, sharing knowledge, building a future together. "The elders are coming today," Velenesh said. They requested a meeting with the full council. Drexel felt a chill at the memory of that ancient species. They had warned the galaxy about humanity, and no one had listened. Now they were returning, for the first time since the crisis, and no one knew what they would say. The council chamber filled slowly. Representatives from every species found their places, but the old patterns of dominance had faded. The VAR no longer claimed the front rows. The weak no longer huddled in the back. Everyone sat where they wished, spoke when they had something to say, and listened when others spoke. High Commander Thrak was there, old beyond measure now, his stone-gray body showing the weight of years. He had been offered retirement many times, but he refused. He said he wanted to see the new galaxy, to understand what humanity had built before he died. Admiral Chen was there too, representing humanity. She was older now, her hair touched with gray, but her eyes were still sharp and her presence still commanded attention. She had become something of a legend across the galaxy, the woman who could have destroyed them all, and chose compassion instead. The elder appeared on the speaking platform, its formless body shifting like dark smoke. The chamber fell silent. 10 years ago, the elder began. We stood in this chamber and warned you about humanity. We told you that you were too late to stop them. We told you that by the time you understood what they were, you would already belong to them. The elder paused, and something like a smile seemed to pass across its shifting features. We were right, and we were wrong. The delegates stirred, uncertain what to make of this. We were right that you could not stop humanity. The elder continued. We were right that they had made themselves essential to your survival. We were right that your arrogance had blinded you to the trap they were building. Another pause. The elder seemed to be gathering itself for something important. But we were wrong about what humanity intended to do with that power. We have watched the galaxy for millions of years. We have seen patterns repeat countless times. Species that were abused and oppressed, that learned to survive through patience and cunning, that built power in secret until they could strike. And when those species finally rose, they brought only destruction. They became what had hurt them. They conquered and enslaved and destroyed, exactly as their oppressors had done. The elder turned its shifting gaze toward Admiral Chen. Humanity broke the pattern. We did not think it was possible, but they proved us wrong. They had every right to vengeance. They had every reason to hate. They had the power to crush their enemies and rule through fear, as the VAR had done, as countless species before them had done. The elder's voice softened to something almost like reverence. Instead, they chose mercy. They chose to heal instead of harm. They chose to lift up the species that had pushed them down. They became not conquerors but teachers, not masters but partners. They transformed the galaxy not through force, but through example. Admiral Chen spoke, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. We had many debates, in those years of planning, about what we would do when the moment came. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted empire. Some wanted to make the galaxy suffer as we had suffered. She paused, and her eyes swept across the assembled representatives. But we decided that becoming our enemies would be the greatest defeat of all. We had spent a century learning your languages, your cultures, your fears and dreams. And what we learned was that most of you were not evil. You were scared. You were clinging to systems that had existed for so long that you could not imagine anything different. You hurt us because you were afraid of being hurt yourselves. She stood, and her presence filled the chamber. We could not change that through violence. We could only change it by showing you another way, by proving that strength does not require cruelty, by demonstrating that power can be used to protect instead of oppress, by being patient enough to let you learn, even when you hurt us, even when you tested our mercy to its limits. Thrak rose from his seat, and the chamber held its breath. The old warrior, the symbol of VAR brutality, faced the human who had chosen to save his people instead of destroy them. I have lived for many centuries, Thrak said. I have conquered worlds and crushed enemies and ruled through fear. I thought that was strength. I thought that was what power meant. He bowed his head, a gesture no VAR had ever made to another species. I was wrong. Humanity showed me what true strength looks like. It looks like saving your enemy when you could let them die. It looks like feeding the children of those who enslaved your own. It looks like choosing the harder path, the path of mercy, when destruction would be so much easier. He raised his head, and there were tears in his ancient red eyes. I cannot undo what the VAR have done, but I can spend my remaining years trying to build the galaxy that humanity has shown us is possible. That is my debt to you. That is my penance." The elder spoke again, and its voice carried a weight of ages. "We watched humanity for a century, trying to understand what they were. We saw the pattern of survival, the patient building of power, the careful positioning for the moment of revelation. But we did not see what made them different from all the species who came before." The elder moved toward Admiral Chen, its formless body flowing like dark water. "You remembered your own suffering, and it made you determined that no one else should suffer the same way. You had the strength to be monsters, and you chose to be guardians instead. You transformed your pain into compassion. That is something we have never seen in all our millions of years of watching the galaxy." Admiral Chen met the elder's gaze without flinching. "We are not special," she said. "We are just a species that got tired of waiting for the universe to be fair. We decided to make it fair ourselves, and that," the elder said, "is why we came today. Not to apologize for our warnings, which were accurate. Not to praise humanity, though they deserve praise. We came to announce something we have never announced before." The chamber leaned forward, every representative straining to hear. "We are old," the elder said. "We have watched the galaxy since before most of your species existed. We have always kept ourselves apart, because we feared what younger species might do if they had access to